we don't want to keep waiting excessively. So welcome to our March PCAC meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda?
Yep.
Yes.
Do we have approval of the agenda?
Yes.
Great.
Approved.
Great. How about minutes? Does everyone have a chance to read the minutes?
Yeah.
Any corrections, additions? There's a motion to accept.
Second.
All right, we'll get into the chair's report then. Thanks to everybody who made this meeting, especially those who live in a place where yesterday was not, and this morning was not the easiest travel. We've been assured by, well, we don't have to go into that. Spring, by the way, does begin in less than 2 weeks, and the time changes this weekend, so that's all a good sign. I'd like to introduce our new transportation planner, Sheila Benesh, otherwise known as the Benesh. She comes to us after working at the Center for an Urban Future, which recently put out a fantastic report on the struggles that healthcare workers have in their daily transit commutes. And that's likely because many are not near subway stations. You have to get on buses and other modes of, I hear music. Okay. Sheila, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Yes. You want me to say a few words for you?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, I will just say,
Modest, huh?
Sheila's been fantastic since she started. Her
Wasn't she fantastic
knowledge,
before she was?
her knowledge of social media and helping us get the word out on what we stand for, what we're pushing for, what we're advocating for has been tremendous since she got here, as well as for many other talents. So thank
And
you,
I've seen
Sheila.
some
Thank
of
you.
the, I've seen some of the things she has produced since she has gotten here,
Yeah.
since she's come in. They were really excellent.
Yeah. Great addition.
Thank
Can I
you.
add something? Because I actually seen her even before the TRC meet and the PCAC. I seen her at the open house with the L train. She has really good, and I've seen her in other places too. She has good energy. We will miss Angela, but at least someone, Sheila will be a great a really good team and like a family, the PCAC family.
Excellent, excellent. Again, welcome, Sheila.
Yes.
Please note that we have substantially increased our social media efforts as we are now back with a full staff in the office. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at PCAC Riders and follow our blog articles pcac.org/blog. Over the last month, our social media engagement has significantly increased, and we hope to continue growing this means of reaching riders whom we represent and other individuals and organizations interested in improving conditions for our riders. The detonation of a bomb in the subway system on the morning of December 11th was a frightening event for even the most seasoned transit riders. Originally erroneously reported as happening in the Port Authority bus terminal complex, the bombing actually occurred within the subway system, within the corridor connecting the 42nd Street and 8th Avenue station and the Times Square complex. As the incident took place in the early rush hour when many commuters were present, it was fortunate the bomb was largely ineffective, with its damage limited to non-life-threatening injuries, even to the perpetrator, who was wearing the explosive device. In response to the bombing, Governor Cuomo has directed the MTA to surge its security presence at transportation facilities, and you can see them at Penn, Grand Central, Times Square, and other major Atlantic Terminal major facilities. The state has also activated and deployed special operations teams from the New York State Police and National Guard to work in coordination with MTA and NYPD, and will provide additional personnel and security equipment from state agencies to enhance this effort. And as always, if you see something, say something, definitely applies. The effort will also include increased uniformed and plainclothes presence at major transit hubs by the MTA PD, police canine teams, and units with heavy weapons, as well as increased step-on, step-off patrols of commuter trains and random bag checks at various locations. And I've also noticed additional platform personnel in many locations. Coincidentally, in January, Grand Central Terminal hosted the graduation of 13 canine and police officer teams from MTA Police Department, explosives detection and anti-terrorism training. During their training period, the teams actually patrolled Grand Central and Penn Station to provide additional security resources in the days following the bombing we spoke about earlier. 11 of the teams are members of the MTAPD and will patrol Long Island Railroad, Metro North, and Staten Island Railway facilities, with the remaining 2 teams attached to the U.S. Park Police and Peekskill Police Department. Well, why Peekskill? Why is Peekskill singled out here?
They
Are they a target all of a sudden?
paid for the training and wanted to.
Wow, interesting. Okay. The new MTAPD will join a force of about 50 dogs in service, which is one of the largest canine forces nationally. At our Transit Rider Council February meeting, we heard from Sam Schwartz with his insights into congestion pricing. It's clear we're now in a different place with respect to adopting congestion pricing than we had hoped to be at this time, as a full congestion pricing proposal was not included in the governor's executive budget, and he included several Fix NYC panel recommendations, but not the core recommendation on instituting congestion pricing in subsequent budget amendments. And the legislature, and I'm sure we'll hear today, is still considering all of these elements. It's also clear that the needs to increase traffic speeds in Midtown and Lower Manhattan and to provide a sustainable source of revenue to support public transportation are serious issues that must be addressed. And as you've heard many times, the congestion is slowing down our buses, resulting in lower bus ridership. Then when they do the counts, there's fewer riders, so they cut the service, so it's like a death spiral for buses. It's really bad. Even Uber recognizes this congestion issue and have joined a coalition that is set to launch a communication and lobbying campaign to bring congestion pricing back into the debate in Albany. And that's with suggested for hire per charge ride for all the car services, much as the yellow cabs now have 80 cents per ride going to transportation, going to the MTA. One difference between the prior Move New York congestion proposal and the Fix NYC recommendations is the so-called toll equalization feature, which would reduce tolls on some less crossings that don't enter the central, the congestion zone. They are not a part of this proposal. Those would have served to save fuel, reduce congestion at several downtown Brooklyn and Long Island City locations, but that is not part of the present proposal, although the governor has urged that toll relief be placed on facilities that do not enter the congestion zone. This proposal does include, as I just mentioned, new charges paid for by for-hire vehicle users in recognition of the large contributions of Uber, Lyft, Via, and the like in increasing congestion that we see on Manhattan streets. Much of the congestion are these car services riding around waiting for, It's also worth noting, by crediting drivers for tolls they have paid, the present proposal does move toward greater equity in costs between the city and MTA East River crossings. In addition, although, as you heard, if you're a Brooklyn Bridge vehicle user and you use the on-ramp to the FDR and you're exiting north of 60th Street, in other words 96th or 125th, you are not subject to the fee. Whereas if you cross the Manhattan Bridge, you're on Canal Street, you get hit with the charge. If you cross the Williamsburg Bridge, you're on Delancey Street, you get hit by the charge. So, the Fix NYC recommendation would cover roughly the same area as prior congestion pricing proposals, Manhattan below Central Park, and raise approximately the same amount of funding, around $1 billion, depending on the structure of charges to be dedicated to transit. A measure of the need to deal with congestion is seen in public criticism of bus performance. A recent report rated 3/4 of bus routes D or F, not good. And congestion and slowing bus speeds have led to declining bus ridership. New York City Transit clearly has responsibility for these issues, but many factors slowing buses are either partially or completely within the control of the city, and DOT Commissioner Trottenberg has mentioned the congestion issue at Transit Committee when we've discussed the issue about buses. City Council member Mark Levine has pointed out municipal control of street space, traffic signals, and traffic enforcement indicates the city has to do more. In a recent report, the council member acknowledged the MTA is ready to go on initiatives that could speed travel, and the onus is on the city to move forward. That is, however, far from the only issue affecting the MTA that will be decided in Albany this session. Funding for the Subway Action Plan and what will be done if the city declines to participate financially, which as of this moment they are doing, will be discussed, that is declining, as well as an executive budget proposal to implement value capture through property taxes. You've heard a lot about that recently. We need to monitor these proposals and speak out when needed. Fortunately, later in this meeting, we will have a chance to get a perspective on some of these from our esteemed guest, Amy Paulin, Assemblywoman Paulin. Members and staff have attended a number of meetings and programs on transportation over the past several months, and there seems to be a growth in the number and popularity of public events discussing the reasons for and solutions to our transportation problems, not to mention the number of elected officials locally and columnists who seem to be making a lot of hay over every misstep or perceived misstep the MTA makes. I will highlight one such event. Ellen and Sheila attended the panel discussion on finding solutions to our transportation crisis hosted by State Senator Liz Krueger and Brad Hoyle. Important issues such as congestion pricing, capital spending, the subway action plan, the bus turnaround campaign, and bus lane camera enforcement were on the agenda. It's gratifying to see many riders taking an interest in the system and making their voices heard as both MTA leadership and our elected officials consider actions that will obviously impact the future of public transportation in our region. So now, the Transit Riders Council, Metro North, and Long Island Railroad Committee reports have all been submitted. Who would like to highlight their respective reports, unless people have read it and don't have any questions? We don't have the Long Island Railroad chair here yet, but we do have Jerry. Jerry, do you want to highlight items from Long Island Railroad?
All right, we'll keep it brief. Basically, it's been a brutal winter for us. Widely wheel touring machines is not in service for the railroad, so we're not being able to get as many of our disabled cars back in service in a timely fashion, resulting in a lot of 12-car trains going with 10, sometimes 8 cars. So a lot of unhappy riders getting caught standing. The Mother Nature hasn't been very good to us. Twice in the last week, we took a severe beating. Last Friday night, getting home was very difficult for a lot of our commuters. And last night as well. Last night we had to shut down 2 separate situations. We had signal problems by Mineola, which took out the Ronkonkoma, Port Jefferson, and Oyster Bay lines. They advised everybody to take the South Shore Babylon line at that time. We had power lines come down in Freeport, which took the Babylon branch out of service. So it took a lot of people 3-4 hours to get home last night. One of the difficulties that we've also experienced with this is last Friday, there were a tremendous amount of reports of price gouging by taxis. We're trying to work with the taxi commissions for Nassau and Suffolk County to see what they can do to crack down on this.
Have you limited those offenses to specific towns or villages?
It's all over the place.
It's everywhere?
It's everywhere.
Okay.
It's everywhere. And I mean, there was one by me, which I thought was a very reputable taxi cab firm in Sayville, and they were one that was reported. So I mean, it's just, I don't know if it's the individual drivers, if it's the taxi cabs themselves, but they know they've got you. And some of the prices they're charging are outrageous. I mean, some are 3, 4, 5 times what they normally get.
They've always been much higher than the actual railroad trip to the station from the city.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, unlike New York City where you can share a cab with somebody, if you take a $10 cab ride and you got 4 people in the car, all 4 people pay $10. You know, it's not like it's $2.50 a piece.
And Jerry, are there, 'cause in Westchester, my understanding was there are rules different towns have of what the taxis, you know, some regulation of what the taxis can and can't do. Is there much of that on Long Island?
There are regulations, it's enforcing them, that's the problem. You know,
And is it town by town or like county?
but mostly town by town. Supposedly there is a taxi commission for Suffolk County now.
A lot of the what they do is they break the
We have
areas
a
up by,
taxi commission
You
in
have, yeah,
Westchester.
that's, I thought that the.
yeah, they break it up by zone. So normally this is the price to zone 1, but when they see that there's a problem and everybody's screwed, the price to zone 1 just suddenly gets tripled.
Wow.
Yeah.
Or zone 2, or, you know, so.
Do the towns renew the licenses, or is it the county that renews?
I believe
It's county.
The county, the reason it's done at a county level is so there's reciprocity between all the different towns, and you don't have to go to every town and get a license.
Now, there are certain towns or villages, I know my village, Patchogue, also has taxi licenses. So even if you have a county license, you can't operate in the village of Patchogue without a village license. So.
And if there's fines for the gouging that are
But then you have to go through the whole filing a complaint, and it gets to be a big, a lot of times people don't even bother, they complain, they moan and groan, they go on
Right,
social
right, but the
media.
work that it takes.
But actually filing a complaint, it's probably more trouble than it's worth, so, people just take their beating and go on, but they are extremely unhappy about it. Another problem that we.
Is the council addressing this in a particular way? Are you writing to county
We had
legislators?
a press release just the other day about it,
Uh-huh.
and, you know, we are gonna push it.
Because like, it would be more, it seems like you say, getting it reported by people versus, whether it's police or whatever, actually doing it undercover and
Yeah.
finding.
Yeah, one of the things to address that we asked the railroad, we've asked the railroad to do is to let people know where they can report overcharges when there are situations.
That's the thing, most people don't even know who to call or who to complain to.
Yeah, they're
and
just happy
that's-
they're getting out of the car.
So I think we probably have to come up with some sort of public service announcements or to guide people where they can make their complaints. The problem, one of the big problems we have is generally only happens when there's a major event, a storm event. So you're not gonna have anybody trying to, you know, any authorities, any police or anything trying to intervene. They got their hands full with all sorts of other stuff. So it's
Right.
nothing you can do while it's happening. It's all after the fact stuff. And again, you know.
Victimless crime.
Yeah, and I mean, it happened on a Friday, most of us happened on a Friday night,
Yeah.
so now you really can't complain till Monday, and by Monday morning,
Right,
it's
right.
like,
It's
you know.
hard.
the last thing I wanted to bring up is,
Stuart, on this topic?
Yes.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Do any of the taxi stands or companies rent space from the Long Island Railroad?
yes,
Right, so wouldn't we have leverage over them because we lease space to them? That is part of their operating rules, they have to, you know, or it could be built into
in
something
theory,
like
in
that?
theory we do.
Yeah,
If
they
you're
do,
servicing our
and
property-
it can be, in practice, the way it's done is it's done through the MTA Real Estate Department, so it really doesn't touch the railroad that closely.
But if they were to identify repeat offenders,
Yes, and that could
we
be,
could report it to the real estate.
they
Well, and
certainly
couldn't
could
you-
be,
As-
I was just gonna say that one of the things we also asked for the MTA to do is to take that into account when they make their leasing decisions. Whether there's a history of abuse of commuters.
Fair gouging or something?
Yeah, price
The
gouging.
problem is, they won't know because nobody even knows to report it
Oh, wait,
to.
wait, wait.
Well, and in New York, sort of the thing of having the sign, these are the rates, if you see price gouging, you know, having it signed either at the station or in the cars.
Yeah, see, in my
or-
town in Belmore, again, there is no rates posted, it's zone.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're
But
in
the
this,
help-
this is
but
zone
as
one,
a
and the guy just tells you, well, that's $6.
Right, but as a deterrent, because I think that's the history in New York City, when they started posting the rates, because nobody knew, you know, what the regular way.
Well, if you posted a map showing what the zones are,
Yeah.
that would take care of that.
Right, but they don't tell you what the price is.
Yeah, but the
price change.
It's the price changing that makes the difference, the zone is the zone.
And the thing is, they don't particularly all work out of the railroad station, they're all over the place.
Right, that's what it-
So everything is in flux, so you don't know, you get in the car, and then the guy calls dispatch, one from Patchogue Rail to Pine Boulevard, you know, and then the guy will come back and say $4.50.
That's a harder one, but I like
You know,
the
that's how
idea
they-
when it's a Long Island Railroad.
Sure, sure.
Sir, and I apologize for this,
That's okay.
it's on mute, but I'm
That's
listening to
okay.
the Con Edison outage problem in
Well, thank
Westchester,
you.
and yeah. So I'm just waiting for one particular town, and then I may step up to yell at them. But the question I have is, in the law, you know, the Director of Consumer Protection has the authority to look at gas stations, for example, when we did that.
Right, yeah, to get the price, yeah.
Do they have the same authority to, I mean, you're suggesting that the price gouging is during the,
During storms,
The
yeah.
price gouging,
Climate weather,
the
when
price
they-
gouging law applies to taxis.
Yeah, when the trains are.
It's like-
Specifically, Attorney General Schneiderman put out a
so it does, so,
release that said it does, yeah.
so the law does include that, so the Director of Consumer Protection in your area, and I think that Nassau and Suffolk both have directors, I
Yeah.
know Westchester does, they're large counties, you must.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that might be an avenue to talk to them, because they have the authority to check up, and they should be.
Yeah, the thing is to collect the specific complaints, and
But the
that's
answer
the
to
problem.
that could be that people up in my town, I'm registered to receive town alerts.
Yeah,
If your town has a similar one, that they should be sending these out. there were reports of this happening. If you were affected by this, we
Call
urge you to please call in or email your information to, and an email address is
And then
provided.
you
They
can
are
voice
not
it
made
all
by
and you can-
complaints. Honestly, the Director of Consumer Protection should be aggressively going out.
That's right.
You know, so you don't need to establish a complaint, you just need to get them, or to talk to them. And if frankly, if there's a problem, that should be brought up to the, you know, to the county executive, that their director isn't doing the right job.
Well, see, in reality though, those directors are basically Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 type people. So we have a situation where everything went south Friday night. They're home having dinner, they're done, we'll see you Monday
But
morning.
if they
9
know it
o'clock,
happens when
you know.
things go south,
There should be
I'm sorry, it happens often enough.
There
Yeah,
has to be there has to be someone that's responsible 24/7 in the town or in the county. Someone has to be responsible 24/7.
You may have been overcharged on a Friday night, but come Monday morning, you should lodge that complaint with
oh
someone.
yeah, no, I agree, I agree fully. And I mean,
Otherwise
they know
otherwise
they
they
have
get
you
away with it.
because we've had, when the railroad, because of, and I'm not blaming the railroad, because sometimes Mother Nature does things, you know, power lines down. You're stuck. If you have to take the Montauk branch and you're in Sayville and your car's in Ronkonkoma, you gotta get a cab from Sayville or Ronkonkoma, and you're at their mercy.
Absolutely.
That's the problem, they know it.
This is the.
What else you got, Jerry?
The last thing I have is the continuing problem that we've had with the railroad, it's ongoing since I joined the council,
Okay.
is lack of communication. We're just not getting the communication. We beat this drum forever. As a response to that,
Communication when there's a service outage, you mean?
yeah.
Or
yeah.
when, just when there's a late train or what?
No, sir, it's basically service outages, we have the major problem. I mean, when they have any planned track work or stuff, they're very good about getting the pamphlets out, getting email alerts out. Planned work, not a problem. It's when something happens and everything goes south that they just can't get the information to their people on the trains, to their conductors, they can't get the information to us in a timely fashion. And it's just been extremely frustrating. Based on that, rather than having a monthly meeting in February, we all met out at Long Island Railroad at their communications center. It was a nice presentation, but basically, and I think Larry will back me up, their technology is about 20 years too late. I mean, it would have been a nice presentation
Was
for.
this at Hillside?
No,
Jamaica.
Hillside,
Oh, in Jamaica, okay.
I mean, it's all stuff that you would expect in 2002, 2003, not in 2018. They said they're working on it, they've even acknowledged that they really need to have a more centralized control center, that it's all split up. But, all these things come with a cost, these comes with dollars, and so God knows when.
Were you looking at their control center?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What-
So
what-
every branch line was visible there and the movement of trains was visible?
Not exceptional, no, they have to reach out to towers, they still have to reach out to individual
It's
towers.
nothing close to what Metro North.
It's not even close to the RCC for transit.
It's like,
They control a significant portion of their system from towers still.
Yeah.
And even though they basically have an echoed version of what people are seeing in the towers, they really don't have any control over how, train movement.
Wow, that is pretty.
So-
but that wasn't
archaic.
tied into the site access plan, is that?
And this on the busiest commuter line in the country.
Yeah, that's what was kind of disturbing, and I guess.
And just how information is just passed on to the customers, where there's a problem, they tell a guy sitting at a computer, okay, could you send out a message that this train is late, and then they sit there, they gotta sit there and type the information. And the information, which is one of the peeves that I had, which they pointed us to a new thing in the app, but it doesn't work. If you're standing at a train station and it says the 4:55 train from Babylon to New York is 25 minutes late, well, I'm standing at Belmore, is that my train? I have no idea, I don't know if that's my train that I'm waiting for. So, you stand there, so they told us about this thing on the app that has an arrival time, it doesn't work. I've been trying it for the past.
So the signs, I mean, I've seen the signs on
Someone
several
can step
stations.
that for you.
Sure. I've seen the signs on several stations, and it said, it was that station's time, for instance, I've seen it
Yeah,
in
but they're
video.
not even close to being accurate, they're not
They're not
updated.
Yeah,
It's a manual update, if a person does it manual, it's not, there's no central tie.
Okay,
yeah, so it's,
One more to go.
Andrew?
yeah.
Regarding that communication, I have to agree with them because I got two people just, not yesterday, but the day before, telling me, even before Storm was acting, they're hearing different announcements, even if the person is at Long Beach, at the last stop, and they're saying, this train going to Racamala or Hicksville. I'm like, but why does have to make an announcement at Long Beach Station if they should be focusing
Yeah, you
where
can't
that
really
train
go
is
from
supposed to be going
Long
to
Beach to
Barclay
Racamala.
or Penn
Unless
or
you
the
change
future
it to
Grand
make it
Central. That doesn't make, everyone's confusing about that. It's like,
Well, I can see pros and cons of having those kind of announcements at, you may
Long
be.
Beach?
Yeah, there may be someone who's gonna switch it, Jamaica for a train to somewhere else and will wanna know that. But I would think that you would want local information shared first, and I don't know how that works.
Well, a perfect example of them just not really having their act together. Got to the train station this morning at 5 o'clock, and they're still announcing what they were doing last night. And it scared the hell out of me because, well, last night they had to get the power lines restored, fixed at Freeport. So what they did was, in the wee hours in the morning, they were basically just running one diesel back and forth between Jamaica and Babylon, like once every hour. So it was like an hour out, an hour back, so it was like 2-hour service. Get to the train station this morning, and they're announcing that exact thing, there's very limited diesel service between Babylon and Jamaica, there's one train every 2 hours, and it's like,
So when you see something
holy
like
crap.
this, do you report it to LIRR officials?
Yeah, we usually do, yeah. I
What
mean,
is
that
their-
was,
What is their response typically?
whoops,
Yeah.
That's very helpful.
Not acceptable.
Right. And we also, at the meeting, we also mentioned a lot of extraneous stuff. I don't need to stand on a platform and hear, don't slip on the platform 5 times. I mean, platforms are slippery. Okay, it's just,
Well,
besides
that's-
information we need to know, some of this
That's
extraneous
like
stuff.
us in the subways hearing, remember, it's flu season.
Yeah.
oh
Cover your
yeah.
mouth.
Cover your- cover your
Get a
mouth.
flu shot.
They tell you how to sneeze.
but
All right,
that's
that's
it,
it.
yeah, that's
Okay.
enough.
That's a lot, and
Yeah.
it's not great, unfortunately. Go ahead, Randy, Metro North.
All right, well, being new to the board, I guess I was kind of impressed that the chairman came in and spoke to the Metro North Committee and discussed our opinion about appointing Catherine Rinaldi as the president. And so I thought that was pretty cool. They're talking about the weather here today. The PCAC Valley line went down the tubes. The first train ran, the second train was canceled. The third train, which was our express, was put into local service and ran late, delayed. The fourth train, 5, 6, and 7 were canceled. I think number 9, 10, 11. We only have 18 trains a day in each direction, and they canceled everything out late morning, everything in the afternoon going inbound. And they're only going to run a certain number of trains in the evening, the last one being 6:48 out of Hoboken. I did get all of NJ Transit, and the problem is crews. They're working from yesterday, and they're in the wrong places, and they haven't got everybody back in place. Really nothing else here. The sleep apnea thing aggravates me to no end. I don't want to get into it, but the reports that were issued by the transportation, well, I operated trains for 6.5 years, and I never, ever, ever went to work and wasn't prepared to work. So I think this is something I just don't want to, it infuriates me that people use this as a cop-out to the fatalities of injury that have happened. So anyways, I'm not going to say anything else today.
So is that what you look like when you're enraged? Okay.
Well, what's
Yeah,
happening now is, there's a new executive director that's been appointed at New Jersey Transit. I used to work for Kevin Corbett over at Empire State Development, and I'm gonna see if we can get a better rapport. The Vice President General Manager of Rail Operations retired, and so we're gonna have to see how they're gonna fix up their act, and get things straightened out. They're so desperate now, they turned around and Jersey Transit is trying to get 40 cars from Maryland. And meanwhile, they have 51 cars just lying around, rusting on their property, which is absolutely outrageous. And we can never get a status from them on this. So we're hopefully...
Where are those cars sitting around, in Hoboken or?
No, 39 of them are sitting down in Bay Area.
Oh,
And the
Bay.
rest of them, we have no idea where. They may be up at the Mickey Mouse Club, Meadows Maintenance Complex.
Which is the
so-
largest underutilized rail facility probably anywhere in the country. That isn't used on a daily basis is just outrageous. You know how many little jitneys you could take off the helix if you ran a shuttle service from the Meadowlands Rail Facility to Penn Station if you had the tunnel capacity? I mean, or even to
You're right.
Secaucus.
But,
The interesting thing is those are the common threes that Oren's talking about. And Metro North is running identical cars
Exactly,
every
no
day
trouble.
on the Hudson, Harlem, and New Haven lines. Identical cars,
Yeah.
but they're just so wasteful. Their disposal equipment policies are just so
When
wasteful.
were the last
in
time
Jersey.
they were run?
About
When they got the last double-decker cars, the multi-level cars, they call it. They just scrap stuff so, they don't wanna bother with it, they get rid of it.
But this equipment, they can't get rid of because there's a lien on it. But we're gonna see what we can do, and I'm gonna talk to Kevin, at the next board meeting, which is next week.
Unfortunately, Kevin has been, a planner type and not an operations person. You think he's gonna be all right?
Well, we'll have to kind of educate him. We do have quarterly meetings, that we had with the previous administrations, at New Jersey. It's called an advocates meeting. And hopefully we can have one of those, so we have more direct input to them.
Has he given any public statement yet about whether they feel or whether they will speed up compliance with the PTC initiative?
That's a horrendous problem, really, they're not giving us no
Amtrak
status
is
on
threatening.
it.
You
All
heard
they're
the
saying
threat.
it's gonna happen, and the Federal Railway Administration is coming back and saying, we don't know how you're gonna do it, we're gonna fine you for it. So it's a huge problem, and I keep bringing it up at every single New Jersey Transit board meeting that I go to. Where is the status on it? I even brought them a copy of the Metro North and Long Island Railroad report. Look, they're at least telling us what's going on. Why aren't you doing that?
And we're held hostage on the Port Jervis line because of that.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah,
Pasco-
the FRA's compliance report as of the end of last year in 2017 is pretty good for any transit. It's not.
It is, it's very bad.
It's not good.
No, it's
Yeah.
not good. Anything else on the Metro North?
Well, just one other
Go
thing.
ahead, Oren.
Amtrak is screaming and yelling, if you don't have your equipment
Yes.
equipped with PTC, you're not going into Penn Station. So we're gonna see how that works.
You're not
out.
running on our lines.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. Forget Penn Station.
Well, that's the big one.
Could affect SEPTA as well, and New Jersey Transit.
But SEPTA's already ready.
Yeah, yeah.
Fully compliant.
Because the corridor is, but I don't know about.
No, they have the equipment on all their lines. Initially, last year they had everything, and their lines are not as long.
Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna push this more, Andrew, so we'll
Okay.
we'll let you know.
Let me give you a brief update on Transit Riders Council. We have a great new president, Andy Byford. He's looking at things with a fresh set of eyes, and it's really refreshing. He's especially looking at the accessible station issue and the bus issue. He has asked his staff to see what it would take to make every station accessible. Clearly, every station doesn't have the geography, but he's also said he's looking into new form of elevators that might fit into smaller spaces, which could possibly make a lot more stations accessible than they are now. He's also he's asked Darrell Irick to come up with a bus plan similar to the subway action plan, a bus action plan, which should be coming to the board in April, to hopefully stem the loss of ridership. You heard me mention earlier about the death spiral because buses can't get through. When I mentioned at one of the meetings that maybe we should have a demonstration route where DOT ensures that there's no double parking, and DOT and NYPD make sure that buses get absolute priority on a route, and then the service is increased, and see if riders come back. And he sounded that was a good thing that he would like to try. So he will be taking a fresh look at those things.
But didn't he say